welcome to Exodus chapter 24. Thank you for joining us this evening. I have the special guest, Baby Harvey, here tonight. It's awesome. And by the way, Chris, those pictures, they look like some of those are professional level pictures from Egypt. That's awesome.
When do you love to go?
Dude, I'd love to go one day.
I've been to Egypt.
You've been to Egypt? No way. How'd you go?
My aunt lives there. Bradford's mom.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
I didn't know y'all were kids.
Oh. Bradford is her cousin. That's how I met her.
Small world.
He keeps it. He
I
keeps it all in the family.
Now, didn't you live with? Did y'all live together?
I did.
Now, who lives with him now?
Nobody.
Himself.
He lives by himself.
Yeah. All right, so here we are, Exodus chapter 24. If you are behind or if you're watching this online, you're likely already on bradflack.com/Exodus. I have maps, archaeological, artifacts of different things, drawings, charts, graphs. What else is on there, Mike?
The videos?
They were good.
And the videos.
All those
Yeah.
pictures and graphs that you had on there
Yeah.
were good.
Yeah.
The way they explained everything.
So today we're in chapter 24. Let's do a quick review as to where we are today. So Exodus 1, a new Pharaoh came to power who didn't know the many works of Joseph and all that stuff that happened. And then Moses leads the people out and many miraculous signs and wonders were done. The strong arm of God, right? And chapter 19 is preparing the people to come to the base of Mount Sinai in the land of Midian, which I think it's not worth arguing about, but I have a personal opinion that I think is backed by archaeological evidence at this point. The traditional site of Mount Sinai is on the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt's territory, but it was put on a map by the mother or mother-in-law of Constantine. So I'm not really sure that just because she said that's it. Because when you read the text and you look at the archaeological evidence, which is on bradflack.com/Exodus, you can see that the land of Midian is actually in northwestern Saudi Arabia. And so it actually lines up better. So anyway, at the foot of Mount Sinai, the people who've come out of slavery from Egypt, we're calling them Hebrews and now Israelites, because they are from descendants from the line of Israel, who has been renamed from Jacob. So Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then he changes his name to Israel. So they're Israelites.
So were the Hebrews first?
They're Hebrews first. And that comes back from the Table of Nations from Genesis. And that's from Eber, E-B-E-R, Eber. And so that was what transpired into them becoming Hebrews.
There's an Eber's papyrus.
Mm-hmm. And that's why.
Yeah.
So prior to them leaving Egypt, they're Hebrews. After leaving Egypt and into the land of Egypt, they are Israelites. And then after the Babylonian captivity, I think, is when they start being referred to as Jewish. So there is distinctions. It's the same people group, but it refers to their eras of time. A lot of times we'll just use it interchangeably. My favorite hot dogs, as a side note, are Hebrew National, all beef.
Oh.
They don't have all this in their kosher. Yep. There's a whole bunch of colored pencils over there. There's one right there.
Okay, cool. I don't want to jump on the camera.
Yeah, you're okay. So that was chapter 19, getting ready at the foot of Mount Sinai. Chapter 20 is the wedding vows, so to speak, because that was the fourth promise. Remember the fourth promises? The fourth promise was, I'm going to take you to be my people. And so Exodus chapter 20 is the vows. He said, don't have any other gods before me. Don't cheat on me. Don't make any graven images. Don't worship an idol when I'm your God. Choose me.
How to love God.
First 4 was how to love God. The next 6 was how to love each other. If I'm your God, this is how I want you to love one another as well. Okay? So that's Exodus 20. And then Exodus 21, 22, and 23 is the first kind of laws from God beyond the original 10. And it actually gives rights to, of all people, slaves. Why do you think he chose to give rights to slaves? Where did they just come from? Egypt. And what were they in Egypt? They were slaves. So he is talking right, he's right there with them, level for level. That's right.
That also tells you he can love anybody.
That's right.
Okay, so first was Hebrews, then Israelites. When did they start becoming Jews?
I think, I can't remember. I've studied this before. I think it was after the...
New Testament? Was it that?
No. I think it was after the Babylonian captivity when they returned.
Whose name has changed from Israel?
Jacob and Israel is a translation. It means he wrestled with God.
Right, exactly. Okay.
Yep.
So they're still called Israelites today.
You can still call them. It's not wrong to call them an Israelite
You
today.
wouldn't call them Hebrews. No, you can speak Hebrew.
You could call them. You could call them a
You can say
Hebrew.
Jewish.
You could say Jewish. You could say Jew. Yeah.
But you would say you
Or you want to say, no, don't Jew me down.
That would be an inappropriate usage of the term Jew. Yes.
Let's just clear that up for
Let's
this
just
broadcast.
yes, for everybody watching, that's an inappropriate use. So I love The Office, by the way. This is an Office reference, okay? And one of the things, Michael Scott, who's inappropriate, of course, and Oscar, who is the Mexican homosexual guy in The Office, which, whatever. And he was like, your Mexicanity doesn't define you. Is there a different word for Mexican you'd like for us to use, one that has a better connotation? He's like, what connotation do you think? So, like, you could turn any, like, he literally is the nationality of Mexico. He's a Mexican.
Yes, that makes sense. They call us American.
Yeah.
Why would we get offended?
But you can have a negative connotation depending on its usage, okay? So, same thing with Jew. You can have a negative connotation. We shouldn't. We should appreciate Jews as the first brothers and sisters of the family of God, and we were adopted into it. That's really what the case should be. So chapter 24 is, we're going to read it here in just a second. It's not a very long chapter, but I think you're going to see there is some really interesting stuff that happens in chapter 24. And I have my Bible again this week. My kids didn't throw me off. Last week I was out of the ESV from over there. This week I'm in the MEV. Do you notice I was in the ESV?
I started looking at this. I was going to put that down.
I got the MEV today again. Again, any version of the Bible is fine. God is not surprised, nor is he shaken off of his throne because you choose to use King James over MEV or NASB over the New International Version. Those things are minor in the scope of what God's doing. And his word is living and alive, sharper than any double-edged sword, and it cuts to the quick of your heart. Okay.
Blowing through Exodus quicker than Genesis, huh?
Well, we're about to slow down because we're going to have a couple more weeks in Exodus, and then we're going into our Easter series, which is going to be some couple of weeks, 4 or 5 weeks there. So we're going to take a pause from Exodus. Excuse me.
I didn't realize.
And then we're going to go into Exodus again. Yes.
What chapter did we do last week that they came out with the bonded slavery that everybody wanted to be? Because they had 6 years they were free.
Yeah.
And then if you had if you'd married or anything else, you stay, and she has to stay another 6 years. And you got your ear pierced.
Right.
And you became a bonded slavery.
Yeah.
It's something, you're not a slave. You were a part of the family. You know, and you were just like it. They just didn't give you the name McCall, but you were part of the family and you were treated well.
Yeah.
So these people that's because they're so far mindset of being a slave. Now they're doing something they really like. They're getting paid for it. They're being taken care of. But you had this emblem. They would punch your ear, and I told him because I got it in my ears pierced. I said, I already got my pierced ears.
Yeah. It was a way of saying, I know I'm free and I could walk out that door.
Yeah.
But I love this master. I choose to bond myself to this master and stay in this door to serve him. I love the master. It's in 22 or 23. Yeah, I can't remember right off the top of my head.
And some of that's because they were happy and liked what they did, and some of it's because they were scared of the unknown. I bet.
That's possible. But specifically, the text tells us that they would do that in the book of Exodus because they loved the master, whoever they were serving. And that's a metaphor for loving God and choosing to put myself under his authority instead of just being Brad in charge of everything. I choose to say, I'm giving up Brad's freedom to be under God because he loves me, takes care of me, and he wants what's best for me. And so I will do whatever he says whenever he asks because I'm bondservant. Paul writes that. He says, I'm a bondservant of Christ. And that's what he was saying. He was saying, I could be a free man. As a matter of fact, I know the law better than anybody else. I know the Bible better than anybody else. But I don't care about that. I care about Jesus. So I don't put myself under the law, put myself under him. So pierce my ears. I'm not free. I'm choosing to be a servant of Christ.
How long do they stay in the bond?
Indefinitely.
Indefinitely. They don't do no 7 year stretch.
No. No.
They're there from now on.
They're there forever. That's right. All right. So let's get into 24 here. And we're going to read through this and then we'll start talking about it. I've got notes, of course. And if you haven't, again, go to Exodus. I've got kind of highlights of what we're going to be talking about and some more pictures on there under chapter 24. Verse 24, chapter 1. Then he said to Moses, come up to the Lord, you and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and 70 of the elders of Israel, and you shall worship from a distance. Now let's stop right there. So far up to this point, it has only been God talking to Moses. Okay? It's only been God and Moses. Now all of a sudden he says, you four, he calls out 4 guys by name, Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, you 4, and 70 elders. Remember, there's between 1.5 and 3 million people, or whatever we talked about, came out of Egypt, and they're still multiplying in the process. And then, so there's 70 people who were kind of put in charge, or who people just assumed, hey, this person is wise and smart and a little older. They're an elder. Like the word in the original Hebrew there, it actually means the corner post. So like of a tent. Think about a tent. If you have a corner post, that's what everything, you put that stake in the ground for that post. That's right. That's right. So that's the corner, that's the elder. That's what that word actually means. Okay. Moses alone shall come near the Lord, but they shall not come near, nor may the people go up with him. So he's saying, you 4 plus the 70 elders, the corner post. Excuse me, I got the cough today. You guys and gals, I'm assuming it's all men, but it's possible it could be women there.
An eldress.
An eldress, if you want to get technical. You guys come up to this plateau, and we're going to hang out for a while. But then Moses is the only one that can approach me up here on the mountain. And there's actually, on my website, there's a plateau of the elders, is what it's called. And I put a pin on there where the plateau of the elders is. And if you kind of look at the topography, it's the peak is up here, and you come down the side of the mountain, and then there's this kind of plateau, and then it just drops off into these cascades down to where they would have been camped out down below. So there's a physical place of where we're talking about, which is, I love those connections, you know. So Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the ordinances. What ordinances? Well, the ones that were in chapter 21, 22, and 23. So he said, hey guys, I was up there with God. Here's what he said. Slaves, you got some rights, and here's what they are. And if you wanted to, you can become a bondservant. He's telling them all this stuff, okay? Then all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words which the Lord has said, we will do. Now, hold on a second. I'm going to time out this. Because right here, Israel, the nation, the people, Israelites, they say, that sounds really good. Yeah, we've got these 10 commandments, and we've got these, the altar rules, and then we've got these slaves have rights, and I can be a bond. Yeah, we're good with that. We will do that. Now, what in our reading of Exodus so far tells us that we know Israel is capable of keeping that? Nothing. I'm going to part the sea and I'm going to drown the Egyptian army. And well, we're tired and we're thirsty. I literally just wiped out the entire enemy. And you're whining about, okay, fine, here's some water. Well, this water's a little bit bitter tasting. Here, put a stick in it. Well, now we don't have any food. Are you kidding? Moses almost loses it in like chapter 15 or 16 or something. He didn't want it to begin with. So he's dragging, a couple million toddlers through the desert. He knows where he's going, though, because he was there, right? Remember, he fled to Midian. So he knows where he's going. So they're here. They've arrived. And so Israel, very quickly after he says, here's what God says, they said, no problem. We're going to do that. We got it. We'll do it. I mean, really? You don't want to think about it? You want to stop and kind of ponder? Now, in their self-defense, I think they may have responded so quickly and so affirmatively to that statement because they are at the bottom of a mountain that's been on fire for a few days at this point, with thunder and lightning and smoke and fire at the top of the mountain. So
one of those mountains that you're talking about actually is still burnt.
it is, yeah.
Really?
On my website, I have videos. You can they go up there and they lift up the rock. Underneath is the same color as the rest of the mountain, but the top is burnt.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's really cool stuff. If you need to go on, it's really cool stuff on there. Okay. I have fun exploring and finding all this neat content. So I just put it on there. All right. So they said, sure, we'll do it. Moses wrote all the words of the Lord. So he wrote it down. Why would he take the time to write all this down?
What? To write what down?
All the stuff that just happened between chapters 20 and chapter 24. The Ten Commandments.
Was
And
he told to do so in a dream or something?
he was told to by God. He said, write this stuff down. Why do you think God said, go write this down? And then he follows through and he's being obedient. Why would God? So we don't forget, because guess what? Humans are pretty dumb when it comes to remembering things sometimes. And if you've ever told a story, Mike, you go fishing sometimes. How big was that fish that you caught that time? Was it like,
Oh.
it was, I think it was like, it must have been this big. No, maybe,
Like
yeah.
Pinocchio's nose.
Yeah, we have a hard time keeping the thing as the thing. And so God didn't want it to be at the whims of human involvement. He said, here's what I'm saying. Now go write it down.
It could be set in stone.
Exactly. And go write it down. Okay. Now, on the website, you bring up a good point. On the website, I have a picture, and it's a chart. And you'll like it, Chris. It's a chart, and it has the early Chaldean Hebrew next to the cuneiform, next to Egyptian hieroglyphics, and it's kind of the alphabet. And you can see how if perhaps he used early Hebrew writing, this is what the characters would have looked like. If he used cuneiform, which some scientists and archaeologists say can predate the Chaldean Proto-Hebrew and Egyptian hieroglyphs, the cuneiform. If that's the case, then this is what it would look like in the cuneiform. And maybe he wrote it, I don't know for sure. I mean, I wasn't there, so I don't know. But it kind of gives you the alphabet in those different languages, so you can kind of see kind of what it would look like. The deal with the cuneiform is, if you imagine, like this table here, this table probably weighs, it's probably 40 pounds total with the metal stand and everything. It's probably 35, 40 pounds. Mm-hmm. And if I have a big old chunk of stone that God has put Hebrew or cuneiform or whatever, so that it's written, or Moses did it, which there's conflicting data there, where God uses his own finger to write it versus Moses wrote it. So I've read it both ways. It doesn't matter. It's still God's word. Okay. But you got stones. I mean, think about a stone, I mean, these are for the kids during church, they can do, and this is just, MDF, and it's really super light. But imagine something that big or bigger made out of stone and rock. I mean, you're talking weight.
Yeah, you're probably talking about 25, 30 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about something that's heavy, and you're gonna have to scribe into it. You got to scratch a bunch to get relief inside of there. I mean, that's a big task. So I'm leaning, because of those things, I'm leaning that either God wrote it or Moses used cuneiform. And here's the reason why I say that. Cuneiform, I'm going to borrow this real quick. I'll bring it right back. So cuneiform, they take some clay and they make it in not quite a round shape like a can, but kind of a flat disc, but about maybe that big, or you can make them bigger than that. But it's more portable, and they'll take the clay and the cuneiform. You can go on here and look, but it's the shape of the end of the stick. They shape it like this. Okay, they shape the end of the stick like that. So then, whenever they're writing, they can do things like this. That's a letter. And that's a letter, and that's a different letter. Like, so you can see they just turn it and jab it to write with it, basically. And that's cuneiform. And they would take the clay, and then you could jab, and you just set it out and let it dry. And then you can carry it with you. You can put it in a bag or put it in your pocket or whatever. Almost like engraving. So for me, miraculously, is God's fingers. That doesn't, like, whatever.
God did it because by the time he goes down the mountain, it's done. I mean, he doesn't have time to stop and whittle it all out.
Or he used the cuneiform for that reason.
But also God takes care of, eliminates lost time.
How's that?
Like, we feel like, just for an example, in my life, a lot of years wasted, he redeems you of that. Like, never mind.
No, I think I got what you're saying.
Well, I'm done trying to explain it.
No, it's okay.
I'm just saying, like, I mean, he's God.
He is God.
He's mighty
And-
awesome, he does amazing things.
And he, if God wrote it with his fingers, okay, I'm down with that. If he said, Moses, you write it, and Moses used this, I'm down with that too. Like, we have the end result. So however it happened.
And you know what? The custom back then, even before this right now, God knew what the customary was. So I'll read this part of the archaeology.
Sure.
We're talking about Moses writing this down.
Yeah.
Okay. So God already knew, even prior to this, the custom was, here's this. Okay. An important part of the process of covenant making in ancient Near East was putting the document into writing to serve as a testimonial to the things agreed upon. God already knew this was the custom.
Sure.
And he was still following the Hebrew custom by writing this down for Moses. So Moses wasn't going against or creating some new habit.
Right.
Like, hey, look at this. This was the habit already of writing it down.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good context. All right.
Amen.
Okay, so Moses wrote all the words of the Lord and rose up early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. By the way, if you go to there, you can see the maps that I have. There's a place where it literally says there's still 12 stones there. All right. Verse 5, he sent young Israelite men who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of young bulls to the Lord. Now, why would he make a point to say young Israelite men? What were these young Israelite men doing? What were they doing here? Offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of young bulls to the Lord.
Hunting.
Kind of. They had flocks, they had herds, right? But imagine a young bull. Is a young bull full of energy, or is it just laid back and chill?
Oh, it's wild.
That's right. So I want you to think rodeo. I'm going to lasso a young bull to take it to the offering to kill it and sacrifice it. You think the bull's just like, all right, let's go. No! Those are a bunch of cowboys. These are a bunch of young men, right? These are cowboys. It said he sent young Israelite men for the young bulls. So these guys are roping and pulling and dragging them over to the altar. And you can see those bulls fighting. Anybody? I mean,
So it's not just here, Lord, take my cow. It's man, I went out of my way to get this for you.
yeah, you're worthy of it, right?
I just see that so many shepherds are the older guys, and that could not be true because it was all of them were shepherds. But yet the younger ones might have been stronger to do this, but leave the old ones intact to stay and take care of the flock.
Well, the old ones carried the wisdom,
Yeah,
and the young ones carried the vigor.
It was like in Step Brothers. Now that you had the old bull, now you can have the young cow.
Well, I had a phrase when I first started in my business life after college. He said, because I was like, oh yeah, let's make this call, let's make this sell, let's do this. He goes, hold on a second. He goes, listen, there's a story of this old cow and the young cow. They're up on this hill, and they're looking down at all the heifers down there. And that young cow said, I'm going to run down there and get me a heifer. And the old cow, he's wise, and he said, I'm going to walk down that hill and get me a bunch of heifers. So, anyway, baby steps. All right, so Moses took half of the blood from the bulls, half the blood, and put it into basins, and half the blood he sprinkled on the altar. So, work with me here. Let me erase this. It's drawing time. Anybody watch Commander Mark when you were a kid? Commander Mark, he's awesome. You should look him up on YouTube. He draws he teaches kids how to draw three-dimensional stuff. I didn't learn much because I'm not a very good artist, but so you have the okay, we got the bull basically here, and we got the blood, and so he's collecting in these basins half the blood. You with me? And the other half is going someplace else. Where's it going?
Sprinkling on the altar.
Sprinkled on the altar. What altar?
12 of them there.
12 stones, right? I don't know if that's what it looked like. They could have been stacked up, whatever. It doesn't matter. So he put half in the basin to collect it and half on the altar, okay? Push my easel over here. So we got half in here, and we got half here. Does this seem like a very pleasant place to you? No. Seems kind of like a yucky place to me. Okay? There's a reason for that. We'll get to it. And then verse 7. This is very interesting. Verse 7. He took the book of the covenant and read in the hearing of the people, and they said, all that the Lord has said we will do, and we will be obedient. Which, oh, they got to be obedient?
Yeah.
They're not. Okay?
When he came down from the hill,
We're not there yet. Hold on. That's a couple of weeks. Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, this is the blood of the covenant which the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. So this here was then put over here on the people. Look at that amazing artwork there. Okay. So now, I want you to think with me for a minute. Have we ever seen blood used before?
Yeah, on the doorways.
On the doorways. This is like doing Family Feud here. We got doorways. Bing! All right. It's one of the answers, right? How else have we seen blood used?
In the river kind of blood.
The river, right? Now, what was that? Do you remember what that was about? That's right. So we have the doorway was the Passover. The river was a plague, right? Where else have we seen blood? Think before Exodus even.
Cain killed Abel?
Yeah. So
Did they do blood sacrifices before this, or is this where the blood
Cain,
sacrifices begin?
Abel, That's a great question.
What about Noah? Remember, he had a sacrifice.
There we go. Now we're getting into some stuff here. So we've got Noah.
When he came off the ark.
Yeah, and we have a sacrifice there. What else? What did you say again?
I said, did they do blood sacrifices before that, or is this where they begin?
Huh. When did sacrifice for the covering of sin and offering to God begin? Adam and Eve, remember? They sewed for themselves coverings of fig leaves, and God said, that's not good enough. I will kill an animal and make its skin over you to cover your sin.
So he did make some clothes after they started hiding from him?
Yep. Did they fix their situation?
He catered to your
No.
sin.
God fixed their situation. So blood is not something new in the pantheon of Genesis and Exodus. Okay. So there is one more that I'd like to bring up. Actually, there's two more. Come on, Mike.
It is mentioned.
See?
Remember Abraham was going to kill Isaac, but he has a substitute there. So no blood was needed there. The ram. And there's one more. Mike. Abraham Covenant.
Yeah, right on.
And what's that?
When they killed all the animals and all the blood went through the middle, and God walked through it first, and because he wouldn't do it, he said, I'm going to walk through it for you. I'm going to take over all of your responsibilities.
That's right.
Because he was asleep there anyway. He was like a zombie, so he walked through it twice. And that's how a lot of them was, is the powerful person went first, and the second, the lower one would go.
That's right.
And God went through both times.
That's right. So we see now a history of blood and God. It actually all starts here with Adam and Eve, though. And it says here that in verse 8, Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, this is the blood of the covenant which the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. So here's chapters 20 through 23 of Exodus. At the time, it wasn't attached to all the rest of the story of Exodus. So you remember here in verse 7, go back to verse 7, he says, he took the book of the covenant. What's the book of the covenant?
The 2 stone tablets. Right?
And chapters 20 through 23 is the book of the covenant. This is God's covenant with the people. So he wrote that first, remember? Because it says he went up on the mountain and wrote all the stuff down. So that's the book of the covenant. That is a part of now the whole Bible. It's part of the Exodus. We also see that same thing happen in Genesis, if you'll remember from our study from last year, when we did Genesis, that it talked about them referencing a genealogy in the Table of Nations. It wasn't just Moses wrote Genesis, so that wasn't just firsthand knowledge. He wasn't there. This was hundreds of years later. And so that had to be from Shem. Adam passed it to Shem. Shem passed it to Abraham. Abraham passed it to Moses. So it had to come down through that line, the information, because Moses wasn't there. And inspired by God. Adam to Noah. Noah's son is Shem. I didn't say Noah, but yeah, it went through there. Okay, and so there's information that we don't have, like the separate book of the covenant today, but we do have the Exodus, which includes that book of the covenant. But if you imagine a stone with chapters 20 through 20, 21, 22, 23 in there, I mean, I don't know how small the writing is, but that's a hefty, I got to carry this big rock around. I think it must have been smaller writing, or I'm kind of partial to cuneiform myself.
I didn't know anything about that, so that's something new I've learned today. Is this that very well could have been a system that he was writing in the stone, in the clay.
And again, whether Brad's right or wrong on that doesn't matter. The text is what's important there, right? So don't get lost on, well, that was God's finger, or no, that was cuneiform, or that was something else that we're not even talking about. We know it was something.
What matters, it came down from the mountain.
Correct. Yeah, don't get lost on that.
All these words that God made Moses write down for him so they can remember, are they going to go in the Ark of the Covenant, and they're going to be in the Ark?
I don't know. We're not there yet.
Okay.
All right, verse 9. Then Moses went up with Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. Because remember, they weren't there yet. He was just saying, go get those guys.
Yeah.
So now he's gathered them, and now they're going back up the mountain. Now remember, I made a joke about this in chapter 17, 18, 19. God had Moses running up and down the mountain. That dude was got to be in good shape, because he is going up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down.
Charlton Heston played him.
Well, Charlton Heston, yeah.
Why was he going up and down? I thought he went up, the thing happened, and he came down.
No, he you weren't here that week, but he went up, and God was like, okay, good, I'm glad you're here. Now go down and tell the people to wait. So he went, hey, you guys hang out. I'm going to go talk to God. He comes back, okay, now what? Oh, I forgot to tell you, they need to wash their clothes, and they need to take baths. Everybody go wash your clothes and take baths. I'll be back in. So, like, in one day, he went like 3 times up and down the mountain.
This seems to be a good-sized mountain.
Yeah.
So, he told the people, stay busy, because I'm going to be up here writing with cuneiform.
Right.
Tablet.
Correct.
Don't worry about me.
I'm here. I'm here. Like, I'm here, right?
Don't worry about me.
And that's going to be important in just a second. So Moses went up with them, and they saw the God of Israel, and under his feet were there was something like a paved work of sapphire stone as clear as the sky itself. Now, the Bible also tells us that nobody has looked upon God. So how can they look upon God? It's possible it was in the form of Jesus. I don't know that for certain. Doesn't change the story from, like, he didn't interact with them in a way where he was like saving them at that moment, if that was Jesus in that form at that moment. Okay. Or it could just be, this is it was very bright light, and it was just a profile of God. The silhouette of God. Okay.
She said that when I pray, it goes on, I see his face there, and that's why I know from far from God I can't see it. But I never can truly see it.
Yeah.
It's just always like, oh.
Yeah. Maybe. Okay.
That's just what that made me think of.
Yeah. No, that's cool. But here it says sapphire stone. Does anybody know what a sapphire is?
Isn't it blue?
It's blue. Let's go to Revelation 4 for a moment. Way in the back of your Bible. Revelation chapter 4. I think this is interesting. John writes Revelation 1,000 to 2,000 years later, after Moses is writing about seeing this on Mount Sinai. And in Revelation chapter 4, he says, after this I looked, and there was an open door in heaven, and the first voice I heard was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, hold on, there was a voice was like a trumpet. If you'll remember,
We had the trumpet before.
that's right. When he was up here on the mountain, his voice was coming out, and it said it was like trumpet. Interesting. So does this sound like the same person to you?
Yeah.
The same God? The Old Testament and the New Testament? Come up here, and I will show you things which must take place after this. So it sounds to me like he's inviting John to come up to heaven to interact with him. What's he doing with Moses? He's not going to heaven, but he's calling him up to interact with him. Okay? Immediately I was in the Spirit, and there was a throne set in heaven with one sitting on the throne. And he who sat on there appeared like jasper and sardius stone. And there was a rainbow around the throne, appearing like an emerald. And 24 thrones were around the throne. And I saw 24 elders sitting on the thrones, clothed in white garments, and they had crowns of gold on their heads. Lightning and thunder. Remember there's lightning and thunder on top of Mount Sinai, with the fire and the smoke and lightning thunder. Proceeding from the throne, 7 lamps of fire were burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. And before the throne was a...
See, that's where they made this movies from. They read this.
a sea of glass like crystal.
Yeah.
If it's the sea, what color is the sea typically? And if it's crystal blue, what does it kind of look like? Sapphire. Are we talking about possibly the same place? Are we saying that perhaps Moses and his 4 compadres and 70 elders, or 3 compadres and 70 elders, got a glimpse of God in heaven on top of Mount Sinai? I'm reading the scripture. I'm not making this up. What are you seeing? There's a connection here.
I knew somewhere in here it showed somebody saw it.
Okay. Verse 11, Exodus 24, verse 11. He did not lay his hand upon the nobles of the children of Israel. Also they saw God, and they ate and they drank. Now, I'm going to bring this up here. Is it possible, not likely, but is it possible for you to be encountering face-to-face with God and not actually care?
Not care, not know, or
Not care.
I don't know.
You'll be overwhelmed
I don't
with
know how that would be possible.
peace.
I don't-
Unless he puts your mind to it, where he's saying, "You're going to see me, but you're not going to care about it," because it's like the Men in Black. When I flash this thing, you're not going to remember that.
Maybe so.
So, the people who crucified Jesus, and he rose from the dead, and they saw him, and they still didn't believe.
Well, they're going straight to hell.
Well, how do you... Well, we're all destined for hell, except for Jesus, so... how do you explain that, though? How do you explain someone who's like, yeah, I know they killed him, and I see him again, but whatever.
In denial, or just believing what you're told all your life, or
A number of things, right? It's not super likely, but it is possible that someone can encounter God and whatever. I'm not down with that. Okay? So, there's 3 options here. Verse 11. He did not lay his hand upon the nobles of the children of Israel, so he didn't touch or deal with the elders. Okay? Also, they saw God and they ate and drank. So, there's 3 options here. They saw God and they were like, that's cool. Hey, what you got? Oh, can I trade with you? I got this lunch. I'm like, kind of not caring. Or, perhaps they saw God and they were like, this is such a momentous occasion. Everybody, get a drink. Get some food. Let's celebrate together. Or perhaps they saw God and believed him, and then after some sort of time period, because it's a separate sentence, also they saw God and they ate and they drank.
Then it becomes second nature, and then we're all excited. They're just a born-again believer.
I don't know what the verse means, and I looked through a commentary, and there's nobody who has a clear understanding of exactly what that verse means. But there are options there, and I think I'm okay with there not being a real good definition, because honestly, that's how we still respond to Jesus today. I know he's Jesus, but I'm still living my life the way I want to live it. I'm still going to do what I want to do over here. Or, I know he's a nice person or whatever, but I'm good. I'm fine. Or, yes, Jesus is my Savior, and I do put my trust in him, and I'm going to change my life. But I'm going to fail at that because I'm trying to do it myself. Or I'm all in. Like, if Jesus says sit down and eat, I'm going to sit down and eat. If he says sit down and drink, I'm going to drink. If he says take this body, this bread, which is broken, and eat it, I'm going to do that. If he says this wine is like my blood, it's poured out for you, drink it, I'm going to drink it. For me, I'm going to go with the last one. I'm going to say, because this is not the first time that we would have seen that they would have had a celebratory food, a snack, eat and drink in the presence of God. Go back to Genesis. Abraham with Melchizedek. What does he do? What does he do in celebration and in worshiping God? Melchizedek says, "Here's some bread. Let's have it together. Here's some wine. Let's drink it together." So, I don't have a for sure answer in there, but I wanted to cover that there's some options there.
It may have been custom, but you only break bread with certain people. You don't break bread with just anybody.
Yeah, and I actually have a story. I'm going to tell you about that later. Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me." Verse 12. Exodus 24, verse 12. The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me to the mountain and stay there, and I will give you the stone tablets with the law and the commandments which I have written, so that you may teach them." So he says, I have written. God says that. But if you look over here, in verse 4, he says, Moses wrote all the words of the Lord. So, was it him writing under the inspiration of God? Was it God actually writing? I don't.
This is kind of interesting for me. Okay. This has to do, a lot of people think the 2 tablets, right? So there would be like 5 on one about, it was actually,
I don't know how many tablets there were.
It was two tablets, because it says it. In the ancient Near East covenant documents were normally duplicated, so one was a duplicate. And the reason why it tells us, because this was the custom back in the day, a duplicate, one copy went to each party of the agreement. These 2 tablets of Sinai did not have different laws inscribed on each, but were duplicates of the same text. That's probably why there was 2 tablets.
Well, mine.
One was a duplicate.
Yeah, mine doesn't say 2, but that makes total sense. That's good. That's a good context. I like that.
Think about it. I mean, he's coming down the mountain with tablets.
Yeah.
One was an actual duplicate. One for the people, and one for the other party. So in the Ark of the Covenant, could have just had one copy.
Yeah.
And the other copy was for them.
That's right.
For.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great add-on, Chris. Thanks. I didn't see that in my study of this. Yeah, I love that.
So he goes back with customs.
I'm glad you're bringing that in. So he's inviting Moses to come up on the mountain. Everybody else, chill out. I'm coming up, okay? So Moses rose up with Joshua, his attendant. We'll learn about Joshua later. And Moses went up the mountain of God. And he said to the elders, "Wait for us in this place." Remember the plateau of the elders? So you have the people down here on the bottom, the plateau of the elders, and his 3 compadres, Aaron, Abihu, and Nadab. And then Joshua's up here, and then Moses is up on the very top. "Wait for us in this place on the plateau of the elders until we return to you. Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has any matters of dispute, let him come to them." Where have we heard of Aaron and Hur before? When the Israelites were fighting the Amalekites, and he was holding his arms up, they were winning. When his arms started going down, he got tired, they started losing. So Aaron and Hur held his arms up so that they won, because Joshua was fighting down in the battle, right? So Joshua was his general. So here we see, he says, Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has any matters to dispute, let them come to them. So he's basically saying, Aaron and Hur, they literally were my right hand, my left hand men. Okay? And they helped me during that. They're good. Just, y'all got problems, come to these guys. They'll fix it for you. Okay? I'm going to go up on the mountain. Verse 15. Moses went up to the mountain, and cloud covered the mountain. And the glory of the Lord rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. And on the 7th day, he called to Moses from the midst of the cloud. Okay, so it must have been a break in the clouds. I don't know, but here we are now. It's kind of this roiling fire, smoke, lightning, thunder cloud on top of this mountain, and it's like that for 6 days. So Moses is kind of like chilling. On the seventh day, God says for Moses to come up to him. Verse 17. The appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a consuming fire on top of the mountain to the eyes of the children of Israel. So, does this sound like a hospitable place to visit? No. A consuming fire. Now, I want you to think back. Early in Exodus, I believe chapter 3, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4, Moses saw a fire that was not consuming the bush. And it was on the same mountain. So this mountain is not new for Moses, and it's not new for him to interact with God and for it to be a fire. But if you'll note, verse 16, the glory of the Lord rested on Mount Sinai. So not just an interaction with, but like God's full weighty glory in that fire shows up. I'm telling you, that mountain had to be just shaking. Thunder, lightning, fire, smoke. I mean,
Well, the people
The
were,
presence of the Lord.
well, remember, the people were afraid.
yeah.
So,
It probably was a lot like, probably looked like there was like a volcano going off or something, you know? And so 6 days, on the seventh day, he calls him up. And the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a consuming fire on top of the mountain to the eyes of the children of Israel. Moses went into the midst of the cloud and went up into the mountain. And Moses was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. So almost 6 weeks.
That's how long Jesus was in the wilderness.
That's right. That's how long it rained.
Oh, so see, he was up there.
I wonder if he was fasting. I wonder if he was fasting while he was up there.
Oh,
We'll have to see. So, let me see my notes. What did I miss? I tried to cover a lot of it without seeing my notes because I studied it. We talked about how Israel responds immediately. Oh yeah, we got it. We'll be obedient. Oh yeah, for sure. And we know very quickly that's not going to be the truth. The word of God must be written, and it's not up for human recollection or creative. It's our creative nature to spin our tales, right?
should we make our own version?
Right. This is an interesting one. There is one covenant with Israel. God's not making a covenant with Moses, and a covenant with Joshua, and a covenant with Aaron, and a covenant with her. He's making one covenant with the entire people group of Israel. Is that true? Is that what we're seeing? Yet he's interacting with Moses on a personal level. We, in Jesus, we have a personal relationship with God through Jesus, but we don't have individual private agreements. We don't have individual private agreements with God. Well, if you'll just let this pet sin stay in my life, God, let me... Yeah, we don't barter. We don't deal. And say, okay, well, just let me have my alcohol. You know, let me have my pornography addiction. Let me have my, cutting corners and stealing from my employer or sugar. Okay, I'm going to do everything else, God. I'll just let me have this one thing, and I'll do. No, this is a covenant where God says, "Here's what I'm demanding of you. Here's what I request of you. You're either in or you're out." Now, that's the old covenant. We're in the new covenant. It's not works-based. Ephesians 2:8 and 9 tells us that it's by grace you're saved through faith. It's not of works, so that nobody can boast about, oh, look what I did. I gave more money, or I worked more time, or I prayed more, or whatever. It's the gift of God, so that nobody can boast about it. So here we see that he says, you can't do it. Actually, this is where I'm going to go into so on the website, if you haven't gone to the website, I have pictures in there, and on there today, let me erase it like this. On there today, I have the covenants between God and people so far through Genesis and Exodus. The first one was the Adamic Covenant, which was between God and Adam. Does anybody remember that one?
That was the creation covenant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What is it like?
Be in charge of the land, be fruitful and multiply, name the animals, all that stuff, and I'll take care of your every need. Oh, one thing, don't eat from one tree. Everything else is yours. Do whatever you want. Adam and Eve broke the covenant. Okay, so then we've got the Noahic covenant.
That must be Noah.
No way.
The Noahic covenant. Okay, and that is, I won't flood the entire world again.
The rainbow.
Yep, I promise that in the rainbow, which is both a physical manifestation of the collapse of the water vapor canopy around the planet, the firmament, and a spiritual reminder that God desires peace with us. He doesn't want to destroy us, but he cannot be with sin. And that barbecue is good. Eating meat's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Amen. I'm a huge fan of the Noahic covenant because of that. Then we have what's called...
He said he smelled the aroma and he was pleased.
That's right.
Yeah, I smell that. When I smell barbecue, I'm pleased.
Can't afford it these days.
No, I know. The Abrahamic Covenant. What is this one?
You want to kill your son when you're around?
That was a good thing that happened, but he actually has a covenant with them.
That was just his obedience.
I'll walk through for you
Yeah.
before and after.
I walk through for you because you can't do it. And when you screw it up, I will also pay the penalty for that too. I'm going to give you all this land from this place to this place, from this place. I'm going to give you all the land, and I'm going to make your descendants like the sands of the sea, like the stars of the sky. Remember? We talked about that in Genesis. That's the Abrahamic Covenant. And now we're approaching what we call the Mosaic Covenant. What's the Mosaic Covenant?
Keep my commandments.
Keep my commandments is in there. I don't like the word commandments here. Not because it's wrong or that's not what the Bible says that, but I like keep my covenant. Keep my vows. For example, how long have you been married now? 3 months?
Yeah, almost. Oh yeah, it was 3 months on Sunday.
Yeah, 3 months. Okay. So when you stood up there and you said, Brandy, I take you, unless someone else comes along. And is that what you said? No.
Sickness and in health till death do us part.
You made a vow, right? The covenant between you, where you said, this is what I desire for you. This is what I desire from you. Don't go sleeping around, just me. And I'm kind of ugly, but just deal with it, okay? But this is our covenant. These are our vows. These are the terms of our covenant, is the vows. So I see Exodus 19, he said, go wash yourselves, go wash your clothes, present yourselves at the bottom of the mountain. I'm going to meet you there. I see that as the wedding. And then chapter 20, I see as the vows. Don't cheat on me. Don't have any other gods. Don't make any graven images. Why? I'm here. Just talk to me. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Like, don't just work all the time and keep your head down and doing things. Like, take time to rest and to ponder me. Like, make time for me. Yeah, so I see the Mosaic Covenant being the vows, the terms and conditions of the covenant between God and the Israelite, the Hebrew, the Jewish people. Now, the thing that sets this apart is this is a so to speak works-based covenant where they had to perform or not perform certain things. And if they didn't perform it, God was going to punish them. Because he didn't just strike them from the face of the planet. Because what's the fourth promise?
I won't flood you again.
No. The four promises of the Exodus is I'm going to take you to be my people. So just because she doesn't get up and make you a cup of coffee in the morning, like you hope she would, doesn't mean that's it. I'm divorcing her. I'm done. We're over. You either have to change your expectations.
He doesn't like coffee.
Good thing you'll have to change your expectations, or you'll have to get onto her for it. Okay, those are obviously extreme cases, but so God in the Mosaic Covenant, He's taking the people, the nation of Israel, to be His people. He's marrying to them. So just because He's upset with something that they're doing, doesn't mean that He's just that's it. I'm done. I'm just killing all of them. We're done. He is long suffering with them. Does that make sense? That's what the Mosaic Covenant is for me. God shows us that He extends great mercy. And in that great mercy, mercy is not getting what you do deserve. He extends great mercy, but He also has great justice and grace. Grace is getting something you don't deserve. And justice is getting what you deserve. And He does all three of those things with the people of Israel from this time going forward to today. And they play heavily in the end times, in Revelation. Okay? God's not done with Israel. They're still very important. Okay? So all that being said, we have personal relationship with God, but we don't have private individual agreements with Him. Death. Remember, Adam and Eve, you can do all this stuff, have fun. You know what? Don't even have to have clothes. Enjoy it. Except for don't eat that tree. And that's the one thing they did.
Do we know how much time they got to enjoy the garden?
Don't know. Don't know. It could be.
Well,
It could.
died at 900 years old. So that gives you a little bit.
But it could have been one day, or it could have been 900 years. I don't know.
I'm thinking about 700 years, and that's a guess. But I'm just going by his age when he died. You know, Cain killing Abel and all the stuff in between. It's just a theory.
I don't know. But the Adamic Covenant is your sin. You tried to cover it up. You tried to hide, and you tried to make these leafy coverings. That's not enough. I require blood to cover over your sin. Kill that animal. Noahic sacrifice. Abrahamic sacrifice. The Mosaic. Remember, he had a bunch of cowboys down there wrestling the bulls. Okay? Death. There is a death and blood required to approach God and be in His presence. Because He is holy and we are not. So that innocent blood of that animal that didn't do anything we're taking that off of ourselves and putting it upon that animal and sacrificially killing that animal, and that gains us access to God. Jesus then was the ultimate sacrifice because He was God. He completely fulfilled His own requirement. I talked about the Book of the Covenant. That's kind of like the seed of the Old Testament. He kind of started with that and was like, I wrote these laws and stuff down. I could probably write about, I could probably go all the way back to when Mama put me in the river. I could probably, you see how that works? Mama put me in the river. Talked about half the blood sprinkled on the people and half the blood sprinkled on the altar. And if you remember, there's two parts. The altar is representing God, and people are the people. So He's saying, my blood is required for you to worship me and I'm setting you apart. I'm making you a holy people. And that has to be done through this consecration, this cleansing of this blood. We talked about how the sea of glass that they saw God standing on top of Mount Sinai, could be the same place as what John saw in Revelation 4:6. I think it is. Fits the description to me. And it would make sense that God's not like in two different places that are described the same way in the Bible. Why can't it just be the same place? Aaron and Hur are left in charge of the camp. And we'll find out that even the people that you trust can let you down. We're going to learn that shortly. And then God called Moses into the fire, into the brightness. Okay? That brightness in the Hebrew language there, it's Shekinah or Shekinah, glory,
God's
manifested glory. In Revelation, it says that they won't have need for our sun. There won't be need for any sun to be shining because God's Shekinah, I'm going to pronounce it Shekinah, glory of who he is will be shining so bright it will emanate everything. There won't be need for lights. There won't be need for the sun or the moon or anything. It'll just be God's glory lighting everything up. And so what we're seeing on top of the mountain is God's Shekinah glory.
And that's the light, the tunnel that everyone probably sees.
Maybe so.
That light from a distance.
Yeah.
Maybe so.
Never know.
And so we see Moses getting called up to God, and he is being invited to walk into that fire, that light, that holy place. It's only by invitation. We don't say, I almost say it almost every week, Romans 5:8. I didn't say, you know what, God, now that I think about it, I'm kind of a sinner, kind of a bad dude. I got some stuff hanging off of my shoulders here. Can you come to the earth and be born and live for 33 years and then die on the cross and then be buried and then resurrect from the grave and go back to heaven so that way I can get that removed back here? Doesn't that seem crazy? We didn't ask Jesus to pay that penalty for us. He did it, Romans 5:8, before we ever knew we needed it. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That's Romans 5:8. So that's an invitation from God. I'll draw it like this. If there is a deep chasm which is infinite down this direction, and we are here, and God is over here. I'll just use a cross for God, but God's over here. We can't get across this thing, no matter what we do. Okay? But God, through the cross, he made a bridge for us, but it came this direction. It came from God. It initiated from him. What did Moses do? Did he say, I'm going to pray really hard. Maybe he'll invite me up on the mountain. Please, God, let me come up there. God initiates it. God's the one who's in charge. God's the one who's holy. God's the one who is the creator of everything, including his plan to save humans.
Moses told him forever that he was too dumb to do all this stuff. He'd get someone else anyway.
That's right.
Many are called, but few are chosen.
So there's still hope for people like Harvey and Bradford then,
There's still time.
There's still time. You don't have to be hyper intelligent. I'm just messing with you guys. I love picking on you guys. So that's Exodus 24. Hope you learned something new. Hope you got something new. Thanks for adding Chris to the.
I've been in the New Testament for the last several years, so it's good to go back, refresh.
Mm-hmm. It's good. I'm glad you joined us. If you're on bradflack.com/Exodus, or maybe even YouTube. I got it on YouTube too. But anyway, we'll see you next week as we go through Exodus 25. Y'all have a good one.